Good day, creative friends. I hope you're doing well. So today I'm going to do two paintings at the same time, and here's the inspiration for the paintings. I grabbed it from a website called Unsplash, which provides freely usable photos. Basically they're royalty free, and I'm not sponsored by Unsplash, but I will put the description in the link so that you can go and check out Elijah's beautiful photos. I am working on Fabriano watercolor paper, and I've divided this small format into two with washi tape. And then I added clean water to the entire surface. And the idea was to blend the first layer, have the colors run into each other. Starting with my first color, which is Jaune Brilliant number 1. I will be adding that to the sky, and I made sure that I leave some areas untouched. That will be the light peeking through the foliage, so it's essentially the color of the paper, which is our lightest color. And then I'm using Payne's Gray to establish the road. I almost did what I consider probably the only mistake as a rule that I follow, which is having the horizon line almost in the middle, which is something I try to avoid, but I think that by looking at the final painting, it will look okay. I must have realized it at some point and worked on that. For the road, I went for Payne's Gray, but I think in hindsight, I should have used something that has a purplish tone. Something like Moonglow would have been probably a more appropriate color, but I realized it after everything was done, and that was okay. The Payne's Gray is kind of like acting as my neutral, but I will also use sepia and lunar black, and I will mix them together at different ratios. Basically I just winged it. I can't tell you how I blended them. I just kept on blending until I reached the temperature that I wanted. So these are kind of like my neutrals and my darkest values, which I am blocking right now. And then for the foliage, I'll use warmer tones. I'm using a flat brush to begin with because that helps me remain loose, even in establishing the different elements or blocking in the colors. That kind of helps me not be too rigid, and I really like the effect. The paper had already started drying a little bit, so it was difficult for me to get the blended edges that I wanted for the dark colors. So what I did is I cleaned off my brush and dabbed it on my towel to remove the excess water, and then I was able to lift some of the colors at the edges. If you don't wait too long, you can do that easily. Unless you're using very staining colors, that might be a little bit more difficult. So once I had established the darker colors, adding some sepia into the mix to give me a little bit of a warmish tone, then I was able to move on to the foliage. And I'm still working at this point with the flat brush. That area has already started drying a little bit, but I didn't mind the harsh edges for the foliage because I wanted the foliage to be the star of the show. So strong lines, fine, no problem. And you can tell that I will take a different approach with the painting on the right. I've taken some liberty, so the one on the left is a little bit more representative of what I have in the reference photo, whereas the one on the right, well, the road curves the other way. I didn't see the point in replicating the same painting twice, really. I used the heat tool to dry the first layer because I didn't want to wait. I was too impatient. And for the second layer, I'm working on dry paper this time around because I want my colors to be darker and more bold. Also, I need clean edges to emphasize some of those elements, for instance, the road. However, I know that I could have benefited from blending the edges a little bit on the road because I find them a little too crisp compared to the rest of the painting. But I realized that at the end when it was too late. I find it makes the road look flat, almost like a caricature, which doesn't fit the rest of the painting. The one on the right is not so bad, but that's the one thing I don't like about the painting on the left. I do love both paintings, by the way, but if I had to redo it, I would pay attention to that. When it comes to the foliage, I made sure not to completely cover what I had done in the first layer. I'm just going to add touches of bolder colors. So for this I used deep scarlet mixed in with a bit of Quin Gold, but also Indian Yellow. Indian Yellow is a super sharp, bold and bright color, and I am using it to add warmth to the painting as well. I'll be using the Indian Yellow pretty much everywhere, all over the painting, even on the ground. It just gives me that vibrancy that I'm looking for, especially since the sun is peeking through the foliage. It's normal to have warmer tones mixed in with the dark areas. I also decided to use Cascade Green, which you don't find a lot of green in the reference photo, but I thought it would be a good addition. This is one of the liberties that I took. I'm drying the paper one more time before adding the tree trunks, and I have to admit that I had a bit of a hard time deciding what would go in the front and what would go towards the back. That's a perspective issue. Obviously, the tree trunks that are closest to the foreground are going to be darker, and the ones that are receding in the backgrounds usually are lighter. For some reason, I don't know why, I don't usually struggle with that, but I found it difficult. Probably because I had so much foliage in the way. I was trying to make sense of it. Aha! I did not use pale gold, but I used star gold. I used a gold. This is also by Creamer Pigments. Of course, I'm going to be using gold. It's fall. It's the bright, bold colors. So how I did it is, or how I added the gold is wherever I thought the foliage would be bathed in the strongest light. So wherever there was white in the paper, I made sure to add gold on the leaves that were the closest to that white. To add the last of the leaves, I went for something bold. I used Deep Scarlet at its highest pigmentation, and then just dabbed a few here and there. Very sparse, but I think it makes a statement, and it provides the contrast that I needed. To add some depth to the painting, I will emphasize the tree trunks that are closest to me with black ink. This is the Pocket brush by Pentel. I'm using an Xacto knife to scrape at the paper actually, and it gives the illusion of birch trees, which are one of my favorite trees. I really like birch. But yeah, this method I think is super effective to add white to the painting without having to struggle with opaque white paint. And I love the way it skips, which creates a beautiful effect. So this is the last step of this video. I'm either going to use these as card fronts because the original paper size is 5x7. So if you cut that down in half, it's perfect for a greeting card, or just to frame them. That was fun. I enjoyed working with a reference photo. It gives you so much information about an image, about perspective, about shading. Just be mindful if you're using somebody else's photo, make sure that it's free to use and that you give credit to the photographer, unless you're using your own photos, of course, but especially if you are going to post on social media, it's always such a nice gesture. I hope you've enjoyed the video. Don't forget to check out the description for the list of supplies. I want to say a special thank you to my awesome patrons who support my art over at Patreon. Thank you all so very much for watching. Have a wonderful and creative day, and I will see you soon.